What's up, everybody? Happy Sunday, good morning, good afternoon, depending on how crazy your Saturday night was. Courtney Cox here with Super Bowl champ Matt Chatham. A little bit of an ego boost for you this morning. More importantly, though, you're not just a Super Bowl champ. You are KP Warriors head coach.
We got TV. Well, not head coach, defense coordinator. I'm not trying to take
sorry. Hustle, hit, never quit.
Hustle, hit, never quit. It's that kind of style today. So we're gonna knock the show out here for you first and
game
foremost.
time noon. So we
gotta get going.
Yeah. Patriots and Dolphins kicking things off at 1 o'clock in Miami. Yeah. We will talk to Doug Kyde and Zach Cox, who are at Hard Rock Stadium. We'll get Chatham's choice, tell you where to put your money. Yeah. But we're gonna kick things off with two words. Antonio Brown. Everybody knows that's where we have to kick things off. Adam Schefter reporting that he is going to make his Patriots debut today. Yep. We know about the allegations. We know about the lawsuit. We know about what's going on off the field, but on the field, how do you think this one's going to play out?
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you set it up that way, Courtney, because quite frankly, we beat the other portion to death throughout the course of the week. I mean, there are a lot of very, very serious issues here, and unfortunately, it seems like most of those will be decided Monday when she comes and visits. Today, you kind of have to table those things because you presume they're not there. You presume that that this is just about football and that he's a good teammate, which, again, I mean, even keeping the sexual assault thing off the side, all the concerns about how good of a teammate one would be. I mean, I'm sure you've experienced this. We've all experienced this in life through work. You show up and there's a new employee here, and you heard some things, but welcome, and you know how they often are. You're on your best behavior when you arrive. I mean, you'll learn more about how this relationship, from just a strictly football standpoint, will go mid-season. Right now, on your best behavior, none of the issues you had in Oakland are really going to percolate down there in Miami. So it just becomes about how can they use him in the offense on short notice. So one of the big examples that I think Doug and I actually used on a NESN show earlier this week, Michael Floyd is a decent example of a guy that was well established in another place, former first rounder himself, obviously not as accomplished as AB is, but he was a quick transaction on the team and took his first snaps 8 days later. So I think he was actually a transaction midweek, missed the game that would have just been then and made the next one. So AB's about there, right? You're just a week out. So what could one do on that short amount of time? Even if you've got a tremendous background in NFL football, he doesn't in this system. He's been more in a West Coast kind of thing, so the nomenclature is going to be different. What's going to be expected of him down the field is going to be different. My best guess is that Josh definitely wants to get this guy involved somehow, some way. But the Patriots are always known for the receivers having a lot upon them that they have to make reads down the field. So it's not just I'm in the huddle break, like my kids have to do, and memorize what route I'm running. You have to run the route based upon the look across from you. So as the ball snapped, you could be doing a number of different things. That's pretty difficult to get up to speed on in a short amount of time if you haven't been doing that at other times in your career. So what that means is maybe you're looking with him at more packaged plays, the kind of stuff that I said they usually don't do, but where you say, hey, you're running this. It's a screen. A screen you don't have to read anything, right? Get a screen to AB. Get a quick pass to AB. Maybe put him in one concept where it's memorized and you just do this down the field. What he'll be asked to do in October, November, December, presuming, of course, he's still here, you won't see that today. But the big thing you want to go after is make good on all the preparation you forced the Dolphins to do. They had uncertainty right up until today. Don't make them waste reps. So they went out there and practiced this stuff. You have the element of confusion in your favor right now, so go ahead and take advantage.
Well, I think when you look back to last week, Tom Brady in the offense was incredible as a whole. You look at Josh Gordon, you look at Philip Dorsett, you look at Julian Edelman. Yeah. So now to bring him into it, it's kind of interesting because they didn't need him last week. Why would they need him this week against a Miami Dolphins team? Yeah. But when you look at that game, would you give the credit more to protection for Brady, or would you give it more to McDaniels and his play call?
Yeah, there's just so many factors involved in that, Courtney. It's a great question because, you try to figure out which one you want to put more weight to. I mean, there's also sort of the goofiness that went around the NFL with a lot of unusual results. I mean, Cleveland getting annihilated, even Baltimore annihilating Miami the way they did. Nobody expected it at that degree. And the Patriots, comfortably out in front of Pittsburgh, controlling throughout. So you say that and you sort of know the history of the NFL with some really ugly week one performances, and then the teams that get blown out by 30 or more tend, and that doesn't happen often, but over the recent history, the teams that do get knocked around that way badly on week one, they actually come back and do pretty well against the spread. Doesn't mean they win, but they put together a markedly better performance on average, right? So I think you go out there and say, well, how did Tom and those guys do what they did? And a lot of it was just really, really efficient passing game and modest gains in the running game, which is not what we saw a year ago. I mean, this was sort of flipped the script. So now the question before that you pose is, well, okay, well then if it was that without this accomplished receiver guy who doesn't really know the offense, what do you gain by inserting him into that? I think part of it is you have to understand that both teams will change markedly. It's kind of like like school. The first week of school, everyone's kind of just feeling themselves out, and then like you kind of get comfortable in class, and then the teacher sort of really gets into the real stuff. So you got to expect that the Dolphins are going to fix a lot of things, may not make them a good team, but they're going to be doing different stuff. So the stuff you did against Pittsburgh may not be relevant.
When you look at the offense as a whole, what are you most impressed by? Because for me, it was Philip Dorsett, and talking to him on Wednesday, he handled every question the Patriot way. Everybody's like, how are things clicking for you? How were you able to do that? And he's like, it was a win. Yeah. It was a win. We got a win, and that's all that mattered for him. Yeah. But when you look at his performance in particular, when you take away Josh Gordon, when you take away Julian Edelman, him in particular, was that what you were most impressed about?
We were the pom-pom show for Philip Dorsett last year. We were very, very big advocate of his.
And he's home right now.
That's a great point as well. He's a hurricane. So I think one of the deals, though, with a guy like him is it's going to be challenging, I think, for Antonio Brown to come in and control his emotions about not getting 15 targets. I mean, that's one other thing that people, I think, need to understand before we even just getting to Phil or Julian or Josh or any of those people, how it's going to affect their volumes. I think it's really important to understand that how did Antonio Brown get to the status he's in? It's because he was in Pittsburgh, a place that would target Le'Veon Bell quite a bit out of the backfield. He was kind of their James White guy, but would get heavier volumes as a straight back. But in the passing game, there was no all-pro tight end to steal 7 to 8 balls a game. Their second receiver was a massive drop-off. And that's just not how things happen in New England. And I mean, you can go back to even like Randy Moss days. Like Randy his volumes were not exceeding Welker's that much. They were very comparable. Wes still got fed, and Wes is not a perfect sort of analogous kind of player to Julian. I'm not trying to do that, but the point of this is the reason Antonio Brown has 1,600-yard seasons, the reason Antonio Brown has the touchdowns he has, is because he was in a place that would throw it to him 15 times a game and maybe catch 6, 7, or 8. You're not going to get 15 opportunities here because that's taking it out of some other really tremendous players, Julian being one of them. We just saw Julian come out of a playoff run where he was basically a 100 yards a game guy. Mm-hmm. And then the first game of the season, he's back catching 7, 8 balls or whatever, and actually had one taken away because of a penalty. So I think you look at this and say, are you willing to go on a gamble, press it a ton of times to a brand new dude, when you've got 3 really good guys? And we'll steer this back to Philip Dorsett, which was your original question. Philip exceeded expectations. This was not, hey, the scheme got you open or something, or some trick play that happened to work with Philip. It was, verticals and him outrunning people, big plays. I don't think you'll see 2 big plays nearly as good as what Philip had last week. So I don't think it's a very difficult balancing act for Josh to do because you don't want to lose something you had a week ago. I think the one guy who might really excel and kind of pull from the pack here on all of this might actually be Josh Gordon because, Julian and Antonio are a little bit, there's some symmetry between what these two guys do. They're extremely dangerous catch and run players. They're very good in the short area of the field. They're very good on low crossers. They're very good on option routes where they pull in and out or they stop and start. And they're just really a pain in the ass to cover, quite frankly. But you have to make a decision. If you're going to send a lot of attention to Julian on the gamble that, hey, Antonio can't possibly be up to speed to send 2 to him yet, or if you do send 2 to him and then you're also spying Jules as a linebacker plus his coverage player, you start running out of defensive backs. I just think this could be a really great opportunity for Josh Gordon to push forward. You guys go talk about AB. Brian Flores, you concentrate on Jules because you know the recent history that he's a real big key to stopping them. And I'll just sit over here and be that other guy that makes Pro Bowls and that can really be a productive guy himself. So, and you mentioned it off the top. All those things I just said, didn't even mention the guy that caught 2 big touchdowns last week. So they're sitting in a good spot.
When you look at Philip Dorsett, we bring up that he was a Miami Hurricane, and people always talk about home field advantage, home turf advantage, whatever you want to call it. But for him, that was his home turf, or I think it's field there, actually.
Is it? Now, finally.
Yes.
Get rid of that baseball field, thank you.
But he's so used to that field. He played there for his whole time at Miami. So does that help him in any way mentally? Probably.
Well, it's fun to go home, but I think there's been a lot of players over the course of their NFL careers that, I know friends that are from the Denver area that get to go back and play in that particular place, and they're used to altitude. But if you've been living your life for several years out on the East Coast or in the South or something, you kind of lose that advantage because you acclimate. Well, but here's the other thing. So if you've been training, say in Miami all off season, I'm used to the swelter. It doesn't bother me. I come to New England for 6 weeks. I go through camp. You may still have that built up. But there's a lot of guys that were from the South that were on our teams that, hey, I grew up in Alabama, I grew up in Mississippi, I grew up in the deep south of Texas, and I'm used to 100 degrees every single day. By the time you've lived in New England for 6 years and you get that one road trip down there, you might have lost it. But I think some of those guys aren't as afraid of it. Afraid's the wrong word, but they're not as leery of it necessarily of going down there as a lot of the northern people like me. I'm from Iowa, so I'm used to 80, 90 kind of sucks. If you're going to go any higher than that, I'm going to be uncomfortable. So there is a certain advantage to it, but sometimes it's tough to go home. Sometimes it's a distraction to go back to your place where you started, have 20 people that you're giving tickets to. I think ultimately you just want to go out and do your gig, and sometimes as you get to be a veteran in this league, you kind of want to cut down on the distractions. You might look forward to the game in Cleveland or something as opposed to going back to your hometown.
Well, we'll talk about weather in a little bit, but let's talk about defense. The Pats defense held the Steelers to only 3 points last week. No touchdowns scored for them. What were you most impressed about?
We just got to see a small glimpse of the depth of this crew, and I think that's so important because there were games a year ago. We'll talk about these in another context later, but the Detroit game, the Tennessee game, some games where they looked like they needed to end-game change, and maybe they didn't have the personnel options to go another way. It really seems this year that because there's depth in two really, really important spots, Courtney, in the linebacker crew and on the back end of the secondary. We got our inactives last week to find out who was playing, and Juwan Williams, a second-round pick, 6'3", 6'4" kind of corner, an unusual body type for this league that we thought was going to have a major role, was inactive, which speaks to the incredible depth. If that guy is not even making it to the 45, that tells you got a lot of options on the back end. And at the linebacker crew, a guy that's been a leadership guy on this team, has multiple rings. Kyle Van Noy his wife's having a baby, and he misses the game, and they don't miss a beat, and the linebacker crew still looks deep. So you go into the hit charts and sort of the play counts that these guys are having, both on the back end, and they're comfortable enough that really there are almost 2 full rotations of linebackers whereby both are equally strong. I mean, you can mix and match Jamie Collins and Hightower and Kyle and maybe Winovich and John Simon, and I probably missed 3 guys, but the point of it, and that's really the point. Shalik Calhoun played a lot of snaps last week, actually played the most snaps of any guy. You really have 2 full waves, and there's not a drop-off. Helps in the heat. It's a big thing. And on the back end, you've got almost, I would say there's 8 defensive backs that you could put, that you can mix and match and have a comparable group of 2 corners, 2 safeties. It's really not much different than one another. That is a tremendous asset, especially when you go out and play in the rough stuff. So the weather that they're going to see. So when I watch the Pittsburgh game, it's great to see Jonathan Jones out there dominating. When you're that good at your third corner spot, jogging alongside, really not threatened throughout the day, you're going to be really good. You're going to get to teams where you're going to force them to be great at the 4th wide receiver spot. They're going to have to be great at the second back. They're going to have to go so deep in their cupboard to actually beat you that it's unlikely on most instances. So if that depth stays intact throughout the year, they've got a big advantage.
And I don't care how good the Pats have been in the last 6 years. The last 6 games against Miami has not been good. They only have one win out of those. Yeah. Miami did look a little bit disheveled against the Ravens. When I say a little bit,
disheveled, I like that.
That's giving a compliment. When you only have that first week, kind of a train wreck for Miami to take film out of, is that hard to study film of such a terrible game?
I love that you asked this, and I swear, folks, we didn't off-air this one, but this is actually really, really important to understand. If you're sitting down today, and you may be of the perception that, I know what I saw last week, and I saw some highlight decks or whatever of the Baltimore game, and that was cool, and they blow them out, and if you take away from that, hey, Miami sucks, but also the stuff that I saw the Ravens do, the Ravens with Lamar Jackson in a pistol formation, and they're a running quarterback, different offense. That'll never translate to New England. So I'd say two things about that. I'm not ready to go team sucks because of a terrible opening day performance. This is the NFL. Stuff changes fast. There's a lot of good pros on that team. I know that there aren't a lot of star players making a lot of money because they've trimmed the roster a bit, mostly young guys, but I think they're moldable. So you don't expect that kind of performance week in, week out. The other part of it is there are actually a lot of things that the Patriots do in their offense that are identical to the concepts that Baltimore hit on last week. I'll ramble through these real quick. It's just three quick ones that I think you should really keep an eye out. Really super duper basic stuff that the KP Warriors will be doing in their game today. Just regular old off tackle runs. Mark Ingram just killed them, basically getting a handoff and running directly at the tackle. And one of the issues that Baltimore was having, Baltimore was creating a problem for the Dolphins, is they would motion. So they move guys, and on motion, it changes the point of attack where you're kind of expecting the ball to go. And Miami didn't adjust. And all they would do is run these runs right at where you should kind of expect it to go. And he didn't have to make a cut. He just goes direct, right? So off-tackle runs, I mean, of course the Patriots have off-tackle runs, and they had some problems with them getting much go of those against the Steelers. It's one of the few things that wasn't great for them on that day. So that's one. Another thing is called the bend play. We don't expect you to learn, football 501 here today necessarily, but you've seen Tom Brady for years. If you've watched this guy closely, a lot of times the Patriots in their offense allow Tom to come out from under center and fake it on one side and then hand it back on the other. What that's meant to do is sort of create a play that looks like it's going one direction. The back actually takes it on the other side and bends back. So it's called the bend play. Baltimore killed Miami on it several times, and I'm like, well, the threat of run's not there with Tom versus Lamar, but that concept is, and they use the heck out of it. So you saw a lot of people over pursue. When Tom opens one way, they'll go that way because they think it's going to be there, and then the back actually takes it back. So bend, watch for bend today. It's just a really basic thing. And the other one I touched on a little bit was just the shifts in motion. Because think about Josh McDaniels' offense. He is all about shifts in motion. And think about now having Antonio Brown and Julian, who are both guys that move all over the formation. If Dolphins were having problems matching the Ravens receivers as far as where they're going to be once motion happens, I mean, if you can confuse them with that offense, this offense will blow your mind. One other little kind of quirk to keep an eye on, and it's not because of some over-the-top analysis of a tight end. We know that the Patriots tight ends are a pretty small part of what they do. Matt LaCosse was actually active last week. I don't know if people caught that. I certainly didn't until later in the week. I think the Van Noy thing, him being inactivated, put Matt up. Matt was dressed but not playing, but we're presuming he'll be up and a little healthier with that ankle this week. Both Matt LaCosse, Ryan Izzo, could catch balls in the seam today, which is the exact seams are just right up there between the hash and numbers, and it's something we actually saw in the Detroit game. I think LaCosse and Ryan Izzo, a couple of those late preseason games, that was the particular ball they were catching. They're not, light it up and catch 25 different kind of routes, but that route, the seam routes, Baltimore crushed Miami on that. And it was like their third and fourth tight end just kept hitting that route over and over again. And Brady's more accurate quarterback, clearly, than Lamar. So it's not, you don't expect them to run like Tom does, or Tom to run like Lamar does, But you can expect them, if they haven't fixed those particular three concepts, to beat them virtually the same way.
Well, Patriots are very familiar with a few guys on this Dolphins team, but Brian Flores is very, very familiar with him. Does that help the Pats when preparing, and vice versa? Does that help Brian Flores when preparing for the Pats?
Got to have the horses. I think that's a big part of it, but I do think that one thing you learn is if you're on a staff, I'm talking like I've been on a staff, and I've been a player in these rooms, but when those assistant coaches that have sort of seniority kind of positions on a staff, they're really heavily involved in the game planning with Coach Belichick. So they I think you do have a pretty good glimpse of inside his mind about what he sees as a threat going into a game, how a team that may be overmatched might hurt them, the kind of approaches teams take when that goes down. Brian was in the room when both Tennessee and Detroit, coming off pretty ugly stuff themselves, were able to put a game together and in one of the instances beat them by 2 scores themselves. So he's gonna have that sort of institutional knowledge, not of what the play call is gonna be, but more philosophically how they know what they'll be facing, kind of thing. And I think with Brian, it's gonna be to speed this game up. Or basically you don't want 75 snaps of offensive football with the Patriots. You want to control the clock yourself. You need to run the football. You don't want your own quarterback back there, even if it's Fitzpatrick or if it's Rosen, because they both look pretty turnover prone. You don't want to put it in their hands. So it's shortening the game. It really is. Get that clock rolling. You want this to be a 26-20 kind of game if you're Miami, or 20-17. But good luck keeping that team to 17 points. But you know that the mode of operation, the ideal that's very tough to hit on, he's going to know that because he has been in the room. Can he accomplish it? That's another story.
We always talk about Tom Brady's age. It's a constant conversation.
Thanks, because we're the same age. But yeah, go ahead.
But we do. We always talk about it. Fitzpatrick is not a young guy either, and he's a vet in the league.
Yeah.
Does that help when he's facing a Patriots team that he's played so many times, or does it hurt him because he's also old?
He's also old. I'm 40. I'm
older for a quarterback. But does that hurt him because he took a decent amount of hits against the Ravens?
Yeah, I don't know, Courtney. Have you heard that he went to Harvard? It gets mentioned. It's like Chris Hogan lacrosse talk. Let's do this now. No, I mean, yeah, I think that the issue this team has is less about Ryan's age. It's about the need for him to make plays. And I think Ryan, in an offense where you give him a lot of good things around him, he will pick you apart. And he is a capable guy. You saw his mistakes last week come when he's flushed. You know, when he's got this young guy. I hope I got the name right. Is it Preston Williams? Oh man, I didn't come to here memorizing the last name, but oh dear. But the second wide receiver for Devontae Parker's out there. We know him as one option. The young guy Preston, I believe his last name's Williams. But anyhow, he was a real good camp story for them from Colorado State, and they kind of found a relationship late in blowout time. Granted, but you really want a guy like Ryan who can sling it, but also can be really turnover prone when things go south. You'd rather have him in a comfortable spot where the run game is super strong for him. Kenyon Drake's a good player, but they really struggled to run the football last week. Sucks when you're in catch-up mode anyhow to even try to go down that road. But it's not a tremendously accomplished offensive line in front of them. The weapons they're okay at the tight end position. They've got some guys there that can do some things, but you're not, you drop Kenny Stills, so you're not really as, you were a young guy, pseudo veteran, and then a real veteran. That mix is all mangled now. So what it does is it puts a lot of pressure on a guy who already kind of has turnover issues. You want to keep him out in front of the game. Instead, now, he might be spending most of his games down a score. And when he's down a score and pressing and he doesn't have as many great options to go with it, that's kind of when problems tend to happen.
But more so physically.
No.
Him getting hit.
I don't think he cares.
All right, well, for more in-depth look, we're going to head down to Miami for Doug Kyed and Zach Cox.
Thank you, guys. Some pregame flavor down here in Miami. It is hot as Hades out here. Unbelievably hot. It's going to feel like 100 degrees at kickoff. I'm not convinced that it doesn't already feel 100 degrees out here. One guy who's used to that South Florida sun, how about that segue?
That's a segue.
Antonio Brown, down here from South Florida, expected to play. So I guess the biggest question now that we think that he's going to play is how many snaps do we actually see out of the guy? My guess on Friday was somewhere between 20 and 30. Might be able to adjust that to 15 to 30, kind of based on how Patriots have used first-week wide receivers in the past. What's your expectation out here?
Yeah, Ian Rappaport's report this morning was that they're probably going to treat this kind of like Josh Gordon's first game last year, where they said they're really going to try to get him involved early. That's really not what they did with Josh Gordon last year. Josh Gordon only played 18 snaps in his Patriots debut, targeted 3 times, had 2 catches, and one of the targets ended up in a defensive penalty. So he was really kind of used sparingly for those first 2 weeks last year. Maybe you'll see Antonio Brown get a little bit heavier of a workload just because he doesn't have the kind of getting back into the game questions that Josh Gordon did last year, having been kind of out of the league for so long before that. But I would not expect him to play 80% of the snaps here today. I think they're going to kind of build his way into it, especially because Bill Belichick talked earlier this week. He's got to learn this entire offense. The offenses that Antonio Brown played in Pittsburgh and briefly in Oakland aren't really that similar to the Patriots offense. So it's going to take a little bit of time to sort of work him in there, but they're definitely going to find a way to get him involved, I'm sure.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, it is somewhat similar to the Josh Gordon situation just because Gordon had been playing under Todd Haley with the Cleveland Browns. Antonio Brown spent years under Todd Haley with the Pittsburgh Steelers. So they're kind of coming from similar offenses. Obviously, Antonio Brown had the short stint there over the summer with the Oakland Raiders in the West Coast offense, but he replaced reportedly has been working, until 10 p.m. or so with backup quarterback Jarrett Stidham in the Patriots facility. That's definitely a good sign. But no, you certainly can't expect this guy to be on the field for 100% of snaps or anything, since he came in on Monday. He's only practiced with the team 3 times. But I certainly do think that Antonio Brown will be used. We'll probably see him in that Z receiver role that we saw Philip Dorsett playing last week. He'll probably be Julian Edelman, Josh Gordon, and Antonio Brown when those guys are on the field. Or maybe they do switch things up a little bit, and since it is such a short week, maybe they mix Antonio Brown in the X receiver role, and then it's Edelman, Dorsett, and Brown when they're in the offense, just so that Brown doesn't have to worry about going in motion, basically just going up against in a press coverage situation right up against the line of scrimmage. How do you see them actually using Brown?
Well, all those receivers do have some versatility, so I think you're going to see Antonio Brown kind of slot in there in multiple spots, similar to what they've done with Josh Gordon and even with Demaryius Thomas in his very brief stint here. Play him outside, play him in the slot, play him at the X, play him at the Z, just kind of move him all around. Just to sort of confuse this Dolphins defense, which this Dolphins secondary is in very rough shape right now. I could easily see, even if Antonio Brown doesn't have a kind of full complement of snaps, I wouldn't be surprised to see him have 4 catches for 85 yards and a touchdown in this game. I think this is definitely sort of the best scenario for him to be integrated into this offense against a team and a defense that really looks like it's struggling right now.
Yeah, for sure. It is kind of an ideal situation to maybe get him off to a hot start in this game. You did mention that the Dolphins are definitely in rough shape. Antonio Brown, however, is kind of dealing with it. He's certainly dealing with his own situation. He's reportedly going to be, or his accuser is reportedly going to be meeting with the NFL on Monday. So they're really trying to get this investigation going as quickly as possible. So while Brown is going to be on the field today, we don't know if he's going to be on the field later on, because if that investigation starts on Monday, the NFL could put him on that commissioner's exempt list by next week. So this could be a 1-game stint, or if that investigation goes Antonio Brown's way, then maybe he will be on the field for 15 games, but we'll just kind of have to wait and see with that. Let's go back to you guys.
All right, so they look hot down there.
They look hot.
They look hot. They're sweating a little bit.
A bit. So first thing that comes up, I wrote on this week in The Athletic. I thought it was just kind of more of a jokey piece this week, but it is fun to be my age and be 10 years removed from playing, and scroll down and see the schedule for the year. Miami week 2 in Miami. Good God, that you still get those bed sweats or whatever. Yeah. I don't know. It's so swampy and it's so difficult. So what I was writing on this week was just the way the guys handle this. So I'll ramble through the real big ones. If you're watching on TV, maybe the announcers pick up on it, but a lot of guys take IVs in pregame, and a lot of guys will even at halftime. A lot of guys at halftime will actually run to the locker room, take a needle as fast as they possibly can, and try to get a bag of potassium or saline or whatever in them. And those are for the guys that are very, very cramp prone. So a lot of the guys that are from the South are used to that. They don't have as much of an issue with that. They don't have to deal with it. But you get a guy like me. I once lost 12 pounds in a game, and I was, I went to the hospital after the game. Took on the most bags of saline and potassium they'd ever given before. 12 pounds in game. So here's my weight loss program. What you do is you make the Patriots and you dress in heavy gear and you play in games in Miami. Everyone go out and do that. No, but I mean, it is terrifying if you have issues with soft tissue stuff, if you cramp a lot. So there'll be salt pills on the sideline. Guys will take these things called Gator Lights. I'm not endorsing a particular brand here, but they're something like this. It's anti-cramp meds that you'll throw into a drink and mix it up. Cold towels on the sideline. Hyper hydrating. So, we walk through the halls of Patriot Place, and if you don't have a drink in your hand, there's a teammate going, still not hydrating, huh? We just do this all the time. Basically, it's sort of subtle peer pressure throughout the week to be hyper hydrated, essentially, going into this thing. You'll have bananas, you'll have, for the potassium part, basically any little trick you can think of. But I say all that nonsense, and you can trick yourself into all these things, and it's helpful, and you need to do them. You just need to stay on top of them, because it can sneak up on you. You get into a 10 or 12 play drive, and I thought I was hydrated, I'm not. What helps the Patriots the most, I think, this year relative to others is that depth we talked about. Mm-hmm. So you don't have to get caught in the 12-play drive. You don't have to get caught in the 15-play drive, either side of the ball. You can rotate the receivers through. They're very deep there. You can rotate your backs through. James White did make the trip. So it can be, you don't have to say, hey, you're on the field for 12 at either side of the ball. That helps tremendously. The other thing is, it's not just that you have more bodies. You always have the same 45, right? It's just that you have an equal amount of faith in the backups as the starters. It's not like if Gronk doesn't catch 8 balls, the next option isn't good enough and we'll never win. Now, this team is so deep and diverse, I think, really both sides, that you can feel comfortable every 3 plays, rotating guys through, and it makes you play better. It does when you feel fresh.
All right, let's talk keys to the game. Let's kick things off with offense.
Offensively, biggest thing here, in all the AB talk and all the sort of how Josh is going to handle this talk, we kind of missed on what I think is sneaky one of the biggest stories of the week, football-wise, and that's the offensive line. So losing Marcus Cannon is a pretty big deal, folks, especially when your rookie left tackle at the other side. Isaiah Wynn has been playing really well, but your rookie at left, your left guard, Joe Tooney, who's been tremendous, played some snaps out of right tackle last week. So we really don't know as you go into this game, are they going to be shuffling David Andrews' lost spot? Why can't I think? Karras. Teddy played great last week at center, but he's still a newer guy. He's a veteran, but I'm saying he's new to this configuration. So you're newish at center. Your left guard might play right tackle this week. We kind of don't know as we go to game day. Or he stays there, and then your right tackle is new, the Cunningham guy that they got in a transaction a couple weeks ago. So we're looking at an offensive line that dominated throughout that playoff run down the stretch, was really one of the team's strengths. And right now you're down 2 starter spots plus a new starter at the third because Brown is out in Oakland now. So 3 different offensive line spots from a year ago. So you got to keep an eye on that. If all the things you'd love to see happen with the receiver group and backs, it doesn't if things don't go well in that group.
All right, and on the defense.
On the defensive side, I think you got to catch it when they throw it to you. I know I'm being snarky, but when you play against guys like Ryan Fitzpatrick, who presumably are going to be playing from deficits at some point in the game, they give you a lot of catchable balls. Reminds me of Joe Flacco a little bit. He will sling it. He can throw it in tight windows. He can make plays, but when you make him press, you should, as a defense, touch the ball 3, 4, maybe even 5 times. How many times do you catch it? You go down there, you win turnover differential, you slam the door. But if you drop those and keep them ahead of the game, maybe not.
All right, and the best part of the show, where to put your money, Chatham's Choice. Patriots, 18-point favorites, over-under 48.5.
Yeah, so if my honest advice to everyone out there, and I'm not following it personally, but my honest advice is run from this game. Because it's not good. No, but here's the thing. If you are dead set on wagering on this one, I'll send you where I'm wagering, which for me is that 18-point spread. Go ahead and take the Patriots on that. They actually won, and it's a terrifying number because it's so big for a road game. But the Patriots actually did go beyond 18-point deficits 3 times last year on an 11-5 team. So it's not as if it was so beyond the pale. So they went 19 on the road against the Bills. Now, I know there's not a fear necessarily of Orchard Park as there is for people with South Beach, but they can hit on the 18 on the road, and I think the disparity between these teams is enough to where that could happen, should happen. But what I'm really telling you is be terrified of the points. Who knows? This could be like they gave up 59 last week to cover on their own. I mean, you just don't know if Miami gets their head out of their butts and plays an entirely different kind of game. That's why I would be scared of the points. And quite frankly, 18 is a huge number. So maybe this is a week to go make Lions bets or Bears bets or something. But if you want to bet on this one, go ahead and take the Pats.
All right, well, there you have it. We got to get Coach here to KP
whistle.
Warriors.
Yeah.
We got to go. He has some play calls.
What was that line?
Hustle, hit, never quit.
Hustle, hit, never quit.
And we're going to send
the
that out.
NESN pregame chat.
Yeah,
did we just get a new
we
slogan?
Did. I think we did. All right, thanks so much for joining us. Enjoy your Sunday. Be safe. Patriots-Dolphins kick off at 1 p.m. Keep it on NESN.com. We will have all your coverage. He's Matt Chatham. I'm Courtney Cox. We will see you next time.